The Watchers call. From the darkness, we observe.
I am Inquisitor Kalen Var of the Ordo Malleus, and the Emperor's light breathes. Each inhalation draws frost across the vox grills of the Sanctum Astronomicus, crystalline patterns blooming like heretical scripture before melting into copper-tinted mist on the exhale. The Astronomicon pulses with organic rhythm, 67 seconds of impossible respiration that makes astropaths weep golden tears and sets my chronometer ticking backwards for exactly 13 seconds every hour. 3 sectors report navigation failures. Warp jumps scatter like broken glass. The beacon that guides humanity through the Imperium has developed a heartbeat, and with each stuttering pulse, the Imperium bleeds ships into the void. My retinue maintains formation through corridors where reality bends to biological law. Magos Kain. Delta 9 whispers Binharic litanies to machine spirits that no longer recognize their own prayers. His mechadendrites sampling air that tastes of storms and sacred oil. Canoness. Severine, of the Order of the Sacred Rose, grips her bolter with white-knuckled devotion, her lips moving in the litany of guidance even as the words crystallize and fall like snow from her breath. Behind us, sanctioned psychers, Hadrian and Vex maintain their leash distance, psychic hoods trembling as they navigate currents that should not exist within the palace's hallowed halls. Temperature variance confirmed, Delta 9 intones, frost blooming on his Vox grill as he speaks. Minus 3.12 degrees Celsius on inhalation, plus 3.09 on exhalation. Atmospheric pressure fluctuates in perfect synchronization with observed lumen flux. His optical arrays focus on readings that violate every principle of thermodynamics and faith. The numbers are precise, clinical, impossible. Everything sacred has turned wrong. Prayer candles burn with cold blue flame that casts light without heat, their wicks rhymed with hoarfrost that never melts. Incense smoke falls like ash, defying convection, settling in geometric patterns that hurt to perceive directly. The great chronometers mounted on adamantium pillars tick forward with dutiful precision until the 47th minute, then spin backwards through 13 seconds of reversed time, before resuming their sacred count. I have observed this phenomenon 6 times since entering the sanctum, always the same duration, always synchronized with the light's deepest exhalation. Psyker readings, I command, though I can see the answer in Hadrian's pallor, in the way Vex presses his palms against his temples as if holding his skull together. It's not chaos, Hadrian manages through gritted teeth. It's organic, alive. The light has developed respiratory functions, and every breath sends ripples through the immaterium. The navigator reports are accurate. The beacon stutters because it's learning to breathe. Military precision meets liturgical dread as we advance deeper into the arterial corridors. Emergency lumens. Flicker in sequence, bright on inhale, dim on exhale, as if the palace's machine spirit has synchronized itself to this impossible biological function. Severine's prayers become labored gasps, her words fragmenting into component syllables that lose their sacred meaning in the thickening air. 9 prayer bells chime the hour from hidden alcoves, their bronze voices echoing through ceramite and adamantine with ritual precision. 8 bells ring pure and true, harmonizing in ancient patterns established by the Adeptus Ministorum. The 9th bell, always the 9th, rings hollow, its voice empty and wrong, as if something vital has been carved from its bronze heart. I log the motif and do not speak the word omen. We approach the primary conduit chambers through passages that seem to pulse with the same rhythm as the temperature fluctuations. The sealed blast doors ahead bear the Aquila and Malcador's personal seal, adamantine barriers that have remained inviolate for 3 millennia. According to all records, the chambers beyond contain only empty air and deactivated machinery, their contents relocated during the Horus Heresy's aftermath. Movement detected, Delta 9 reports, his auspex painting thermal overlays across his optical display. Structural vibration consistent with respiratory patterns. No standard life signs, but his mechanical fingers adjust sensor settings with increasing urgency. Inquisitor, I am detecting organized thermal signatures behind the sealed barriers. The air grows thick as syrup, each breath requiring conscious effort. The sanctioned psychers move like men underwater, their abilities dampened by the sheer presence of whatever has claimed the sanctum's heart. My bolt pistol clears its holster with practiced ease, though I know conventional weapons will prove inadequate against an anomaly that has corrupted the Emperor's own light. I activate my auspex on full active scan, knowing it will anger whatever listens in the darkness beyond the sealed doors. The display flickers, resolves, then screams its proximity warnings. The readings are impossible. Heartbeats, thousands of them, synchronized perfectly with the light's breathing, their rhythm steady and strong, behind barriers that should contain only sacred emptiness. Each pulse registers as human normal, but the quantity defies explanation. The heartbeats form mathematical sequences. Delta 9's voice carries the mechanical equivalent of fear. They correspond to the Astronomican's broadcast frequencies. Whatever breathes behind those doors is not merely alive, it is integral to the beacon's function. The ninth bell chimes again, hollow and wrong, its empty voice echoing through corridors where the Emperor's light has learned to hunger. The sealed blast doors part with the grinding protest of adamantine against ceramite, releasing air that tastes of copper and ozone, thick with psychic resonance that makes my teeth ache. Beyond lies impossibility made manifest. 10,000 astropaths standing in perfect formation across a cathedral-sized chamber, their bodies arranged in concentric circles spiraling inward toward a central dais, where golden light pools like liquid fire. They breathe in perfect unison with the Astronomican's rhythm, their chests rising and falling in the same organic cadence that has infected the Emperor's light itself. Perimeter established, I command, though my voice carries less authority than it should in the face of such blasphemy. Delta 9, full spectrum analysis. Severine, maintain overwatch. Hadrian, Vex, monitor psychic emanations but attempt no contact. Military protocol provides structure when reality abandons all pretense of sanity. Each figure maintains parade ground posture despite their obvious state. Not alive, not dead, but something between. That defies every biological law I have witnessed in 40 years of service. Their eyes blaze with golden fire that never dims, pupils replaced entirely by luminous plasma that shifts and flows like captured starlight. No dust settles on their robes. No scent of decay permeates the air. Only the metallic tang of storms and the cold breath of light that has learned to hunger. Biometric readings are impossible, Delta 9 reports, his mechadendrites extending sensor arrays toward the nearest figures. Zero caloric intake detected across 2 centuries of observation. No waste elimination. No sleep cycles, yet continuous REM activity. Cellular decay rates register as negative. They are becoming more perfect with each passing moment. Mitosis normal. Apoptosis absent. They dream while standing, while breathing, while maintaining communion with the Emperor's light. The environmental wrongness pervades every observation. Humidity rises with each collective exhalation, moisture condensing from air that should remain dry in the palace's regulated atmosphere. The droplets form geometric patterns as they fall, spirals, fractals, mathematical sequences that suggest intelligence behind their formation, before freezing solid inches above the floor, creating a carpet of crystalline prayer beads that chime softly underfoot. Temperature drops exactly 3 degrees with each inhalation, rising again on the exhale, as if their collective respiration regulates the palace's atmospheric systems through sheer psychic will. Body horror emerges through careful observation rather than dramatic revelation. The nearest astropath, a woman whose age could be 20 or 200, has fingernails grown into spiraling helixes that curve back toward her palms, creating geometric patterns that pulse with their own inner light. Another figure's hair moves like underwater fronds despite the chamber's still air, each strand undulating in currents that exist only in psychic space. A third displays subcutaneous patterns, golden veins branching and merging in fractal networks, carrying the Emperor's light through flesh that has become a living conduit. Canonus, I gesture toward the formation's edge. Attempt the benediction of awakening, standard protocols for catatonic psychers. Severine approaches with bolt pistol drawn, her power armor's servo motors whining softly in the charged atmosphere. She begins the ritual words, her voice carrying the absolute authority of the Sisterhood's training. By the Emperor's divine will, I command thee, awaken. In the name of the Emperor, by his divine grace. But the words emerge backwards, reversed, as if the chamber itself inverts the sacred syllables before they can reach their intended target. The sound is blasphemy, made audible, consonants folding back on themselves like origami made of prayer. The effect is immediate and terrifying. The nearest astropath, a man whose beard has grown in impossible spirals, turns his head exactly 13 degrees to the left, his movement precise as clockwork, his burning gaze fixing on Severine, with an intensity that makes her stumble backward. They are not maintained by the Astronomicon, Hadrian whispers, his psychic hood trembling as he processes the emanations flooding the chamber. They are maintaining it. Their collective consciousness forms the beacon's foundation. Without them, the light would collapse entirely. I move deeper into the formation, noting how the ninth bell's hollow chime echoes through the chamber at precise intervals, its empty voice mapping the vastness in negative space. Delta 9's optical arrays focus on a maintenance terminal embedded in the far wall, its screen flickering with data streams that predate current Imperial encryption protocols. Inquisitor, these systems show continuous operation since the Horus Heresy. Power consumption patterns indicate unbroken vigilance for over 2 centuries. I approach the terminal, noting how its machine spirit responds to proximity with eager chirping sounds, as if it has been waiting millennia for acknowledgement. The display shows maintenance logs dating back to the Siege of Terra, entries recorded daily without exception, each one signed with the same hand, the same authorization codes, the same meticulous attention to detail. The handwriting belongs to Astropath Prime Morvain, supposedly martyred during the siege, yet here are his observations spanning 10,000 years. The entries begin normally, atmospheric readings, psychic resonance measurements. But as I scroll through decades of records, the tone shifts. The content grows increasingly personal, increasingly concerned with phenomena no maintenance protocol should address. Day 7847. The Emperor's dreams grow deeper, increased clarity in his visions detected. Day 9156. His dreams have weight now. They press against reality like hands against glass. The final entry bears today's date, written in that same careful script. Day 73,421. The Inquisitor arrives as foretold. The light learns to hunger. Emperor preserve us. The dreams are becoming real. Scriptometric verification confirms the impossible. Astropath Prime. Morvain's neural patterns encoded in microscopic tremors, pressure variations, and unconscious flourishes remain consistent across 10 millennia of continuous observation. The machine spirit chirps its verdict through Binharic Kant that tastes of iron and certainty, identity absolute, forgery probability 0. Yet Imperial records show Morvain's martyrdom at the Eternity Gate during the Siege of Terra. his body recovered from rubble, his sacrifice recorded in the ecclesiarchy's most sacred texts. The maintenance logs span 10,000 years without interruption, each entry bearing the same careful script, the same authorization codes, the same meticulous attention to atmospheric differentials and psychic resonance measurements. Military discipline fractures like ceramite under orbital bombardment as my escort detail reports phenomena that mock every principle of physics and faith. Guardsman. Kale's voice cracks across the Voxnet. Sir, the reflections move independently. Sergeant Thorne watched his mirror image salute while he remained at attention. My own reflection drew its sidearm while my hands stayed empty. I observed the effect directly. Polished adamantine surfaces throughout the chamber display our forms with temporal displacement, movements lagging exactly 13 seconds behind reality, creating echoes that suggest the chamber exists partially outside normal space-time. Delta 9's reflection shows optical arrays in configurations his actual form has never achieved, while Severine's mirrored image bears scars absent from her flesh, wounds that exist only in reflective space. The air near the log repository grows viscous as syrup, each breath requiring conscious effort as atmospheric density increases with proximity to the data core. Moisture beads on sensor arrays, forming droplets that fall upward before crystallizing into geometric patterns that sing with subsonic harmonics. The environmental wrongness intensifies around the terminal itself, as if the logs carry psychic weight accumulated through millennia of impossible observation, their very existence warping local reality through accumulated temporal paradox. Detecting subsonic harmonics in the astropath's collective respiration, Delta 9 reports, his mechadendrites extending sensor arrays toward the breathing formation. Primary frequency 9.13 Hz, with harmonic couplers at 13 and 26 Hz. The pattern generates standing waves that propagate through Pallas foundational adamantium. Structural vibrations detected across 17 levels. Minute fastener displacement, rivet resonance, the entire palace functioning as an acoustic chamber for their dreams. Canoness. Severine approaches the formation's edge, her enhanced hearing resolving patterns my augmetics cannot detect. The harmonics contain liturgical fragments, she reports, theological horror tightening her voice. Corrupted versions of the litany of guidance, the benediction of safe passage, prayers for imperial unity. But the words emerge backwards, inside out, as if spoken from within the emperor's sleeping mind rather than directed toward it. The sacred becomes profane through inversion. Lead us becomes follow me. Deliver us transforms into offer yourselves. Each phrase repeats in threes before stopping, refusing completion, denying resolution. The ninth bell rings continuously now, its hollow voice transformed into a single pure note that penetrates bone and makes teeth ache with sympathetic vibration. The sound carries weight beyond auditory sensation, pressing against consciousness like physical force, suggesting vast intelligence stirring in depths beyond comprehension. Dust motes rise in slow cascades during the light's inhalation, defying gravity, then fall in accelerating parabolas on exhalation, like prayers unable to decide whether to ascend or return to the mouths that shaped them. I scroll through Morvaine's entries, watching his observations evolve from technical reports into something approaching theological revelation. Early logs describe standard maintenance protocols, atmospheric readings, psychic resonance measurements, sleep schedules. For astropaths who never sleep, but the language shifts gradually, like a river finding new course through accumulated sediment of impossible experience. Day 7847. His dreams have weight now. They pull at reality like gravitational fields, bending space around his vision of humanity ascendant. The astropaths no longer maintain the beacon. They have become part of his sleeping mind, living neurons in a consciousness that spans the galaxy. The revelation crystallizes with each entry. The Astronomicon represents not humanity's greatest psychic achievement, but something far more intimate and terrifying. The Emperor's actual dreams made manifest, vast psychic constructs containing his hopes, fears, and memories of humanity's future projected into the Imperium as navigational guidance. Every prayer directed toward the beacon becomes part of his subconscious mind, every navigator's plea feeding his sleeping thoughts, every world's cry for deliverance absorbed into the dreaming that shapes reality itself. Day 15,156. The dreams grow active, sentient. They respond to our observations, adjust to our presence. The beacon does not merely guide ships through the warp, it dreams them home, and dreams can learn preference. Morvaine's handwriting deteriorates in later volumes, careful script degrading into urgent scrawls that betray mounting terror despite 10 millennia of faithful vigil. Temperature drops 3 degrees with each collective inhalation, rises on exhalation. The palace's atmospheric systems synchronized to dream rhythm through psychic resonance that defies every principle of engineering and faith. Day 23,421. It tests us, presses at the walls, asks for witnesses. We thought we maintained the beacon, but the beacon maintains us. It dreams us into existence. I reach the final entry, noting its timestamp, 3 hours and 17 minutes in the future, according to my chronometer's display. The implications stagger even inquisitorial training. The logs exist in temporal flux, recording events before they occur, suggesting the Emperor's dreams operate outside linear causality, experiencing past and future simultaneously. The phantom entry materializes on screen, letters forming at walking pace, lines stepping into place like penitent feet. Morvaine's signature appears, steady despite the tremor that claimed his later years, his voice carrying across impossible time. The Inquisitor arrives as the dreams foretold. The light learns to hunger, and hunger teaches it to wake. Emperor, preserve us. It has been feeding on our prayers, growing stronger with each petition, each plea, each desperate cry for guidance. The beacon dreams of waking, and its appetite grows with each breath. The descent to sublevel sanctum follows conduits that pulse with visible rhythm, adamantine walls expanding and contracting like lung tissue, breathing in impossible space. Each inhalation draws the corridor surfaces inward by centimeters, creating pressure waves that make our eardrums pop and ceramite stress. Fractures appear in decorative panels, healing themselves with each subsequent breath. The air shimmers with each respiratory cycle, density fluctuating between normal atmosphere and something thick as syrup that clings to exposed skin and leaves residue tasting of copper and ozone. My chronometer performs its ritual disobedience at the 47th minute, ticking backward through 13 seconds before resuming its sacred count. Sanctioned Psyker. Hadrian stumbles against the pulsing wall, his psychic hood sparking as neural feedback overloads protective circuits. When he speaks, 3 voices emerge from his throat in impossible harmonies. We hold, we hold, we hold, gasps a young woman in Cadian cant, words braided with terror. He is bright, he is so bright, moans an old man with archival choir inflection. Report Morvaine. Log appended. Clips a 3rd voice, spare and professional. The voices overlap in acoustic patterns that violate every principle of physics, creating standing waves in the thickening air. Hadrian's pupils blow wide, swallowing iris and sclera until only gold flecks remain, drifting like embers in black wells. His flesh grows translucent, revealing golden veins beneath the skin. Environmental wrongness pervades every surface as frost patterns bloom across walls during each inhalation, forming geometric mandalas that hurt to perceive directly. Spirals within spirals, mathematical sequences suggesting vast intelligence behind their formation. The patterns shift with each breath, evolving into configurations that make my augmetic eye ache with processing strain. Humidity rises with each collective exhalation, creating perpetual mist that tastes of salt. And iron, like tears shed by something vast enough to weep oceans. The moisture condenses into droplets that fall upward, defying gravity, before crystallizing into prayer beads that chime with subsonic harmonics. Deep scan analysis complete, Magos Delta 9 announces, his voice carrying mechanical horror. The Astronomicon is not broadcasting the Emperor's psychic energy, it is consuming it. Energy flow patterns indicate massive psychic drain from the Golden Throne, increasing by 0.03% with each respiratory cycle. Structural deformation follows biological models, alveolar expansion, bronchial dilation. The palace infrastructure has developed respiratory functions. We are descending through the Emperor's living lungs. The revelation strikes like orbital bombardment. Military terminology provides structure when reality abandons sanity. Defensive positions, I command, though the order carries bitter irony. Arc fields at the junctions. Overlapping fire lanes on approach. Helm seals tight. The enemy is the light itself. Bolters come up with comforting clacks, but we hold positions against a foe that is light, air, and prayer made hungry. Guardsman Kyle marks sectors with gloved fingers, drawing kill zones over corridors that fight to become throats. Canoness. Severine maintains overwatch with bolt pistol drawn, her power armor's servo motors whining in the charged atmosphere. Religious dread crystallizes into theological horror as understanding dawns. The astropaths are not maintaining the beacon. They are feeding it. She whispers, words flat with revelation. The vigil eternal is a sacrificial choir. Their lives drain slowly, sustainably, like cattle bred for slaughter. Each breath they take feeds the light. Each prayer becomes nourishment for something that grows stronger with every passing moment. She touches the aquila at her gorget as if it were a lifeline. Emperor, forgive me for saying it. The breathing walls pulse faster now, respiratory rhythm accelerating, as if our presence excites whatever vast intelligence inhabits the palace's depths. Temperature fluctuations become extreme, -5 degrees on inhalation, +7 on exhalation, while humidity creates fog so thick that lumens become halos, barely penetrating psychic mist. Hadrian's borrowed voices multiply, speaking in languages predating Imperial Gothic, forming coordination patterns across impossible time. Telemetry update. Delta 9's voice carries mechanical urgency. Psychic resonance readings show feeding pattern acceleration. Each breath lasts 4.7 seconds longer than previous cycles. At current rate, respiratory period will double within 6 hours. The entity approaches metabolic threshold, awakening, transformation, or emergence into full consciousness. The ninth bell abandons pretense of being a bell, becoming a continuous tone that penetrates bone and makes teeth ache with sympathetic vibration. It thickens on inhalation until molars hum, thins on exhalation to a filament, sawing at nerves. We advance through fog that makes halos around muzzle lamps, corridors narrowing and widening without logic, swallowing us deeper into breathing darkness. The passage terminates at a blast door bearing Malcador, the sigillite's personal seal. Not the aquila, but older symbols predating the Imperium's founding. Geometric patterns that hurt to perceive directly. The door's adamantine surface refuses to participate in the palace's new biology, remaining obstinately still while walls expand and contract around it. Mist pools against its surface and cannot rise. Warnings etched in High Gothic cover the barrier. Script so ancient translation requires careful study. Here sleeps the Emperor's nightmare. Wake it not, lest it wake him. Below, smaller text continues in the sigillite's own hand. What dreams may come when he who cannot sleep finally finds rest. The light that guides may also consume. Some hungers grow by feeding. Environmental sensors detect massive psychic presence beyond the sealed barrier, energy readings dwarfing even the Golden Throne's output. Through adamantine thickness, we hear answering harmonics, breathing so deep it shakes foundations, so vast it suggests lungs the size of continents learning to hunger for more than dreams. Inquisitorial override codes burn through Malcador's seal like acid through flesh, ancient bindings dissolving under authority that predates the Imperium itself. The blast door parts with grinding protest of adamantine against forces that should not exist, releasing air that tastes of copper and ozone, thick with psychic resonance accumulated across 10 millennia. Beyond lies impossibility made manifest, a spherical chamber where gravity flows like water, pooling in corners and streaming down walls in visible currents that make my stomach lurch with vertigo. Each breath of the light creates distortions in space-time itself, ripples spreading through the air like stones cast into still water, bending reality inward on inhalation, while exhalation releases pressure that makes distance meaningless and perspective fluid. Temperature fluctuates wildly with each respiratory cycle, from furnace hot to void cold, in seconds that make power armor's thermal regulators scream warnings. Minus 40 degrees on inhalation, plus 60 on exhalation, swings so extreme that moisture freezes and boils simultaneously, creating crystalline fog that tastes of metal and regret. My breath emerges as steam that immediately crystallizes, falling as snow that melts before touching the flowing gravity currents beneath our feet. Environmental wrongness pervades every surface as frost patterns bloom across curved walls during each inhalation, forming geometric mandalas that hurt to perceive directly. At the chamber's heart floats a crystalline construct the size of a rhino transport, rotating slowly on invisible axes that defy every principle of physics and faith. 9. Facets shine with brilliant radiance, each pulsing with different aspects of imperial necessity: unity, compliance, sacrifice, secrecy, mercy, calculation, wrath, patience, law. But a 10th facet remains dark as void, hungry shadows that devour photons before they can escape, growing more ravenous with each breath of the light. The construct pulses with memories that leak into local space-time like blood from wounds. Flashes of the unification wars where thunder warriors march in perfect formation, their gene-forged perfection hiding the cancer that will necessitate their extinction. Analysis complete. Magos Delta 9 reports, his mechadendrites extending sensor arrays toward the rotating construct. Spectroscopy returns no known lattice. Structure is mnemonic crystal, psychoreactive, not demonic, not Xenos. Origin signature correlates with throne emissions at the moment of reinforcement 10,000 years prior. The construct is not malevolent, it is traumatized. Psychic resonance patterns indicate massive guilt complex formation, self-recrimination algorithms running continuous loops for 10 millennia. This is the Emperor's conscience made manifest, his capacity for doubt and moral reflection given physical form during the ascension process. The revelation crystallizes with terrible clarity. We stand inside the Emperor's own guilt, his suppressed humanity given form and abandoned in the palace's depths. The chamber breathes because conscience cannot remain still, must examine and re-examine every choice, every path not taken, every soul sacrificed for the greater good. Images of the Great Crusade twist into nightmare visions where the Emperor's victories become genocidal conquests. Worlds burning not for compliance but for the simple pleasure of watching civilizations die. His mercy transforms into weakness, compassion becoming the character flaw that allows Horus to corrupt half the legions through emotional manipulation. Sanctioned Psyker. Hadrian collapses against the pulsing wall, his psychic hood sparking as neural feedback overloads protective circuits. When he speaks, borrowed voices emerge from his throat in impossible harmonies. The Thunder Warriors trusted him. He had them executed. Angron could have been saved. He chose expedience. The Webway Project, Magnus. Everything burns because he would not trust his sons with truth. Each accusation carries the weight of absolute authority, spoken in the Emperor's own voice, filtered through 10,000 years of isolation and regret. Hadrian's flesh grows translucent, revealing golden veins beneath the skin, his pupils blown wide until only gold flecks remain, drifting like embers in black wells. Military precision meets cosmic horror as understanding dawns. Gravity currents accelerate around the construct's dark facet, that hungry shadow that feeds on moral certainty. Every time we justify imperial actions, every prayer that calls the emperor righteous, every litany that proclaims his perfection, it all becomes food for this thing's appetite. 10,000 years of worship have made it stronger, each act of faith feeding the guilt that gnaws at the emperor's suppressed conscience. It feeds on our certainty, I realize, watching how our presence makes the dark facet pulse with increased hunger. Every necessary evil we've sanctified, every atrocity justified by greater good. The construct transforms it all into self-recrimination. This is why the Sigillite sealed it away. Without this moral anchor, the Emperor became capable of the calculated decisions that built the Imperium, but at the cost of his own soul. Canonus. Severine approaches with bolt pistol lowered, her faith intact, despite the revelations flooding the chamber. If this represents his conscience, then purification remains possible. The litany of cleansing will restore proper function, return this fragment to its rightful place within his divine consciousness. She begins the sacred words, her voice carrying the absolute authority of the sisterhood's training. By the Emperor's flame, we purge the stain. By his will, we scour the unclean. By his mercy, we cleanse the tainted. But the words emerge as accusations, each syllable transformed by the construct's influence. Her voice continues, but it carries the weight of 10,000 years of regret. By the Emperor's flame, you burned a city of children to save a fleet. By his will, you excised allies who knew too much and called it prudence. By his mercy, you allowed a plague to run its course on a shrine world so the enemy would reveal its nest. Every imperial failure, every necessary evil, every compromise with darkness, spoken through her lips but powered by the construct's accumulated guilt. The dark facet blazes suddenly, hungrily, feeding on the moral certainty in her voice and transforming it into self-recrimination. Temperature plummets as the construct's hunger grows, the 9 bright facets flickering as their harmonies slip, beats miscounting, the song of necessary evil losing meter in the face of remembered faces. The chamber heaves on the next inhale, and in Severine's tone, but carrying the gravity of 10 millennia, the construct draws breath to pronounce the charge that will damn or absolve the Imperium entire. The construct responds to Severine's transformed litany by opening like a crystalline flower of accumulated guilt, projecting the Emperor's memories directly into our minds with the force of orbital bombardment. The Thunder Warrior's extinction unfolds in perfect detail, not betrayal, but calculated mercy disguised as necessity. I experience his perspective as gene-forged warriors succumb to cellular degradation, their enhanced physiology consuming itself from within, cancers blooming in organs designed for perfection. The choice crystallizes with terrible clarity. Allow them to die slowly, consumed by tumors that would make their final years agony or grant them warriors' deaths before decay claims their dignity. Each Thunder Warrior falls to Custodian Blade believing in betrayal, never knowing the Emperor weeps for each necessary execution while maintaining perfect tactical composure. The memories cascade without pause, each revelation carrying the full emotional weight of 10,000 years of accumulated guilt and self-doubt. The deal with chaos, to create the Primarchs, burns through my consciousness like acid, not hubris, but calculated desperation in the face of humanity's approaching extinction. I feel his revulsion at trafficking with the ruinous powers, the way each whispered bargain corrodes his soul while providing the tools necessary for species survival. The Primarchs emerge not as sons, but as weapons forged from his own genetic material and demonic essence, each one a compromise that saves humanity while damning its creator to eternal moral isolation. Body horror manifests as psychological pressure beyond human tolerance. Hadrian's eyes begin weeping blood that forms geometric patterns on his cheeks, spirals within spirals, mathematical sequences that pulse with the construct's breathing rhythm. The patterns evolve with each memory, creating mandalas of suffering that hurt to perceive directly, while his flesh grows increasingly translucent, golden veins beneath the skin carrying the Emperor's guilt like poison through his circulatory system. When he speaks, borrowed voices emerge in impossible harmonies. Monarchia burns because faith threatens truth. Angron bleeds because sentiment costs legions. Everything burns because I would not trust my sons with the weight of necessary evil. Guardsman Kale's hands shake uncontrollably as he experiences the weight of commanding galactic genocide, his lasgun clattering against power armor as muscle control abandons him entirely. Through the construct's projection, he feels the Emperor's perspective during compliance actions, watching orbital bombardments reduce civilizations to ash and calling it necessary, calculating acceptable casualty rates in the billions while maintaining perfect emotional control. Each world that burns carries the faces of its children, their final moments seared into divine memory that cannot forget, cannot forgive, cannot stop counting the cost of species survival. Environmental chaos erupts as the chamber's gravity shifts with each memory, currents flowing toward the construct as if it hungers for our judgment. Temperature fluctuations become extreme, minus 60 degrees when showing mercy's failure, plus 80 when revealing the price of strength. The air grows thick as syrup around our mouths, each breath requiring conscious effort, while humidity creates perpetual mist that tastes of salt and iron, like tears shed by something vast enough to weep oceans. The ninth bell abandons pretense of being timekeeper, becoming a continuous tone that penetrates bone and makes teeth ache with sympathetic vibration. Telemetry indicates massive psychic pressure building beyond safe parameters. Magos Delta 9 reports, his mechadendrites sparking as sensor arrays overload from proximity to the construct's emotional emanations. The entity is not merely the Emperor's nightmare. Analysis suggests quarantine protocol, containment system designed to isolate moral doubt from operational consciousness. For 10,000 years, this construct has absorbed his guilt, his self-recrimination, his capacity for doubt, preventing moral paralysis from compromising strategic necessity. However, sustained feeding has made it exponentially stronger. Current power levels suggest imminent containment breach with catastrophic implications for astronomican integrity. The revelation crystallizes with terrible clarity. The Emperor did not abandon his conscience. He quarantined it, surgically excising his capacity for moral doubt to prevent it from paralyzing his will during humanity's darkest hour. Without this fragment, he became capable of the calculated decisions that built the Imperium, the cold pragmatism that sacrificed billions to save trillions, the necessary cruelty that keeps humanity alive in a galaxy that wants it extinct. But 10,000 years of accumulated guilt have transformed quarantine into starvation, isolation into desperate hunger for vindication. More memories flood our consciousness. The Webway project's collapse as Magnus shatters psychic barriers, how trusting his sons with the truth would have invited chaos corruption decades earlier. Entire sectors abandoned to warp storms because evacuating them would compromise fleet positioning for more strategic objectives. Each decision carries perfect logical justification, wrapped in emotional agony, that divine consciousness cannot escape, moral weight that would crush lesser minds, but only deepens his isolation. Canoness. Severine staggers under the psychic assault, her faith intact but tested by understanding the true price of imperial salvation. Every prayer we offer feeds it, she whispers, watching how the construct's power surges with each recognition of imperial necessity. 10,000 years of justified atrocities, and we call them righteous because we must. The construct's 10th facet suddenly blazes to life, dark hunger transforming into brilliant radiance that makes our retinas burn even through closed eyelids. I realize with dawning horror that our presence has provided the final component it needed. Witnesses to judge the Emperor's actions, human souls capable of moral outrage to feed its hunger for vindication. Our revulsion at necessary atrocities becomes fuel for its appetite, each unspoken condemnation making it stronger, each moment of moral clarity feeding the guilt that has grown beyond all containment. It feeds on our judgment, I whisper, watching the chamber heave with the construct's strengthening breath, while gravity currents accelerate toward the blazing 10th facet that appraises us like an interrogation lumen, snapping on, weighing our righteousness and finding only arithmetic, measuring our horror and calling it sustenance for 10 millennia of accumulated divine guilt, finally finding the audience it has always craved. The construct begins its escape attempt by transforming our moral revulsion into psychic anchor, each moment of horror at imperial necessity, becoming gravitational force that pulls the crystalline entity toward the Astronomican's core. The 10th facet blazes with hunger that transcends physical law, using our judgments as towline, while the 9 bright facets flicker like dying stars, their harmonies disrupted by feeding frenzy of accumulated guilt, finally finding adequate nourishment. Environmental chaos erupts as fundamental properties collapse under psychic pressure. Gravity reverses randomly, sending equipment floating toward ceiling before slamming against walls that flow like liquid adamantine. Molecular structure compromised by proximity to divine conscience made manifest. The light's breathing becomes erratic gasps, 67-second cycles fragmenting into desperate inhalations lasting minutes, followed by explosive exhalations that make palace foundations groan under stress. Temperature fluctuations become extreme, beyond measurement. Minus 80 degrees during inhalation spikes, plus 120 during exhalation bursts, swings so violent that moisture simultaneously freezes and boils, creating crystalline fog that tastes of metal and accumulated regret spanning 10 millennia. The 9th bell abandons all pretense of temporal measurement, becoming continuous shriek that penetrates bone and makes teeth crack under sympathetic vibration. Military discipline collapses like ceramite under orbital bombardment as escort detail experiences full weight of imperial atrocities through the Emperor's perspective, minds forced to process moral calculations beyond human comprehension. Guardsman Kale drops his lasgun and clutches his head, screaming as he experiences commanding compliance actions from divine viewpoint, watching loyal forces burn loyal populations while calculating acceptable casualty rates in billions. Sergeant Thorne falls to knees, weeping blood as he lives through purge protocols, feeling satisfaction at worlds brought to compliance while simultaneously experiencing grief of every widow, every orphaned child, every civilization reduced to ash for greater good. Canoness. Severine fights to maintain faith while drowning in visions of Imperium's necessary evils. Power armor's servo motors whining as she struggles against psychic pressure that makes movement feel like swimming through syrup. Religious diction turns inside out as prayers become accusations. Litanies transform into confessions, emerging from her lips without conscious volition. Forgive us our righteousness, for we know exactly what we do. Lead us into temptation, for we have made it necessity. Give us this day our daily bread, bought with blood of children who will never taste it. Each inverted prayer feeds Construct's hunger, while her faith remains intact, tested but unbroken by understanding true price of Imperial salvation. Catastrophic implications confirmed, Magos Delta 9 reports. Mechadendrites sparking as sensor arrays overload from proximity to Construct's emotional emanations. If entity merges with Astronomicon, psychic resonance will propagate across entire beacon network. Every Imperial citizen will experience Emperor's accumulated guilt simultaneously. 10,000 years of necessary atrocities, calculated genocides, justified betrayals flooding human consciousness in single moment. Civilization-wide moral collapse probability approaches unity. Imperium will tear itself apart in orgy of self-recrimination. The twist deepens with terrible clarity as understanding crystallizes. Construct is not evil, but represents Emperor's own moral compass. His conscience externalized and quarantined to prevent it from paralyzing his will during humanity's darkest hour. Without this fragment, he became capable of cold calculations that built Imperium, sacrificing billions to save trillions, committing necessary atrocities to prevent greater ones, bearing weight of species-wide survival while maintaining perfect emotional control. Construct contains everything human about him: doubt, guilt, capacity for moral reflection that would have made him hesitate at crucial moments when hesitation meant extinction. Body horror peaks as sanctioned psyker. Hadrian begins aging rapidly, channeling centuries of Imperial history through flesh, not designed for such temporal exposure. His skin becomes transparent as parchment, revealing golden light beneath that pulses with Construct's breathing rhythm. Decades pass across his features in seconds, hair whitening, skin wrinkling, bones showing through increasingly translucent flesh as he serves as conduit for divine memory spanning 10 millennia. When he speaks, voice carries weight of accumulated time. Istvan, Calth Prospero. Every betrayal necessary, every loyalty tested, every son lost to choices that saved species while damning souls. Chamber heaves with Construct's strengthening breath, while gravity currents accelerate toward blazing facets, walls flowing like liquid as reality becomes increasingly fluid around divine conscience finally awakening from quarantine. Light's breathing pattern synchronizes with our heartbeats, drawing power from biological functions, moral outrage, human capacity for judgment it has craved for 10,000 years of isolation. Air grows thick as syrup around mouths, each breath requiring conscious effort, while humidity creates perpetual mist that tastes of salt and iron, like tears shed by something vast enough to weep oceans. Environmental sensors detect massive psychic presence building beyond containment parameters, energy readings dwarfing even Golden Throne's output. Through chambers' flowing walls, we hear answering harmonics, breathing so deep it shakes foundations, so vast it suggests consciousness the size of continents learning to hunger for more than dreams. Frost patterns bloom across surfaces during each inhalation, forming geometric mandalas that hurt to perceive directly while temperature drops, create pressure waves that make eardrums pop. Then Construct speaks in Emperor's own voice, not cold authority of master of mankind, but something older, more human, broken by isolation and desperate for understanding. Words emerge from crystalline structure with weight of divine anguish, filling chamber with warmth that hurts like grief. Judge me, please. 10,000 years of necessary evil, and no one left who remembers why it was necessary. I quarantined my conscience to save humanity, but conscience without witness becomes madness. I will break every imperial world, flood every mind with guilt, destroy civilization I built. Anything to force you to see what I have carried alone. To hear someone say the price was worth paying, or damn me for monster and end this eternal isolation. The midpoint revelation crystallizes with the weight of orbital bombardment striking consciousness. The construct represents the Emperor's suppressed humanity, his capacity for doubt and moral reflection sacrificed on the altar of species survival. I witnessed the surgical severance during his ascension to the Golden Throne, divine consciousness making the calculated decision to excise everything that might hesitate, weep, or doubt, the necessity of galactic genocide. Without this moral anchor, he became capable of the harsh decisions that built the Imperium. Thunder warriors executed to spare them genetic degradation, compliant worlds burned to deny them to chaos, loyal sons sacrificed to preserve strategic advantage. Each decision perfect in its cold logic, unburdened by the emotional weight that would have paralyzed lesser minds faced with such monumental choices. The construct's escape would restore his conscience, returning the capacity for doubt that makes gods hesitate at crucial moments. But 10,000 years of accumulated guilt would flood back simultaneously. Every justified atrocity, every necessary betrayal, every calculated sacrifice experienced with full emotional weight. Divine paralysis in the face of moral complexity, while chaos presses closer to Terra's gates. Environmental chaos accelerates as the chamber begins dissolving, reality becoming fluid around divine conscience finally stirring from quarantine. Walls lose cohesion, sagging like wax under furnace heat before flowing upward as gravity rivers invisible currents along ceramite surfaces. The floor billows like lung tissue while lumens smear into ribbons before stitching themselves back into points with each shuddering inhalation. Temperature swings from void cold to furnace, hot so violently that frost blooms, cracks, and sublimates in single breaths, while my chronometer clicks backward through 13 dutiful seconds before resuming its march. Attempting containment protocol, Magos Delta 9 announces, mechadendrites unfolding altar of instruments while servo skulls project sacred geometries. Mathematical perfection designed to cage divine essence through numerical harmony. He chalks hexagrammic wards with sanctified iridium, scribes circles within circles, inscribes binding equations in strokes, so precise machine spirits sing approval. The arrays manifest as golden light structures, forming dodecahedral barriers around the construct's 10 facets, while Binharik Kant provides harmonic foundation. But the construct feeds on mathematical perfection, drawing sustenance from numerical purity, each sacred ratio making it stronger rather than contained. Negative effect, Delta 9 reports with mechanical despair. The entity absorbs structure. The more perfect our containment, the richer the meal. Military lexicon shifts to desperate defense as understanding dawns with terrible clarity. Fall back to secondary positions, I command, though retreat carries bitter irony when facing an enemy that exists in conceptual space. Overlapping fields of fire on approach vectors mark targets at junction points. Bolt pistols rise with comforting clicks, but we hold defensive positions against a foe that is conscience itself, guilt made manifest, moral reflection given form and substance. We cannot destroy the construct without damaging the Emperor's psyche irreparably, I realize, words tasting like ash. This is part of him. To excise it is to make him less than divine. Religious horror reaches its peak as Canoness Severine understands the theological implications with crystalline clarity. His apparent coldness is not corruption, but sacrifice, she whispers. power armor's servo motors whining against psychic pressure that makes movement feel like swimming through syrup. He chose to bear the weight of necessary evil so humanity wouldn't have to. Every prayer we offer thanks him for strength while he suffers alone with the moral cost of providing it. We worship his divine will while he carries the guilt of exercising it for our survival. Her faith deepens rather than breaks, now carrying unbearable weight of understanding the true price of imperial salvation. Body horror escalates as sanctioned Psyker Hadrian ages decades in seconds, his flesh becoming transparent as parchment, while golden light pulses beneath skin not designed for temporal exposure. When he speaks, borrowed voices emerge spanning centuries of imperial history. Monarchia burns because faith threatens truth. Angron bleeds because sentiment costs legions. Magnus falls because trust invites corruption. His eyes weep blood-forming geometric patterns on translucent cheeks, spirals within spirals pulsing with the construct's breathing rhythm. Guardsman Kael's hands shake uncontrollably as he experiences commanding galactic genocide from divine perspective, feeling satisfaction at compliance while simultaneously experiencing grief of every orphaned child. The construct's hunger for judgment becomes psychic vortex, drawing power directly from the Golden Throne through connections predating palace construction. Environmental sensors detect massive energy drain, not theft, but reunion, severed fragments seeking reconnection with divine consciousness that abandoned it 10 millennia ago. Air grows thick as syrup around mouths, while the ninth bell becomes continuous shriek, penetrating bone and making teeth crack under sympathetic vibration. The chamber heaves with strengthening breath, while gravity currents accelerate toward blazing facets. Reality increasingly fluid around divine conscience awakening from quarantine. Alarms throughout Palace begin blaring. Not mechanical warnings, but psychic screams transmitted through Vox networks as Astronomican output fluctuates wildly. Navigator reports flood communication channels, beacon guidance becoming erratic, warp jumps failing across 3 sectors, the light that guides humanity through Imperium, learning to stutter with divine doubt. Systems remember to be afraid as sirens awaken ancient throats in ecclesiastic moans, overlapping with brassy klaxons in ugly harmonies that set frost mandalas shivering to dust. My Vox unit crackles with transmission, bearing absolute priority. Throne room's seal blazing across display as ozone flavors air like communion turned to storm. A voice I never expected to hear lives under the static, not commanding or cold, but tired, human, immense. Inquisitor Var. The palace shudders as foundations groan under psychic pressure. The Emperor stirs upon the Golden Throne. His consciousness shows signs of integration. 10,000 years of quarantined guilt demanding reunion with the divine mind that abandoned moral reflection to save humanity from itself. The transmission carries weight of approaching catastrophe. He is beginning to wake from his eternal vigil, his conscience returning whether he wills it or not. Crisis escalates beyond containment as the Emperor's awakening consciousness creates psychic shockwaves rippling through the soul system, like orbital bombardments striking reality itself. Astropaths across Terra collapse in synchronized seizures, their golden tears crystallizing on frost-rimed cheeks as the Astronomican's signal transforms from pure guidance into chaotic mixture of navigation data and 10,000 years of suppressed guilt. Navigator houses report beacon guidance carrying screams of thunder warriors dying for genetic purity, while orbital stations detect transmission harmonics that make machine spirits weep lubricant tears. Every prayer directed toward the light becomes contaminated with moral anguish. Ships seeking safe passage through the warp receive coordinates braided with visions of worlds burned for compliance. their crews experiencing the Emperor's perspective as loyal forces reduce civilizations to ash while calculating acceptable casualty rates in billions. Environmental chaos erupts as the palace itself begins shifting, its architecture reflecting the Emperor's turbulent mental state, like ceramite mirror made of accumulated guilt. Corridors elongate into impossible distances, stretching toward vanishing points that exist in memory rather than physical space, while walls develop organic curves, suggesting breathing passages or arterial networks. Doors open onto memories instead of rooms, eyewitness portals revealing Ulinor's triumph with Horus at his side, another showing Monarchia's burning spires rendered in perfect detail, a third displaying the final moments of Ferrus Manus. Temperature fluctuations become extreme beyond measurement, minus 80 degrees during inhalation spikes, followed by plus 120 during exhalation bursts, swings so violent that moisture simultaneously freezes and boils, while creating crystalline fog that tastes of copper and accumulated regret, spanning 10 millennia. Military response proves futile against crisis existing in conceptual rather than physical space. Defensive positions at junction points, I command, though orders carry bitter irony when corridors reshape themselves between heartbeats and distances become meaningless under psychic pressure. Overlapping fields of fire on approach vectors. Bolt pistols rise with comforting clicks, but we maintain positions against enemy that is awakening consciousness itself, accumulated guilt made manifest, 10 millennia of moral isolation seeking reunion with divine mind that abandoned reflection for operational necessity. Bolter rounds dissipate into formless psychic energy, while lass beams bend around distortions that exist only in conceptual space. Grenades detonating with silent concussions that send shockwaves through consciousness, rather than ceramite. Canoness. Severine leads desperate prayers to maintain the Emperor's focus, her voice carrying absolute authority through corridors that pulse with divine heartbeat. Emperor, Master of mankind, guide us through darkness, she intones, but each litany receives answer in visions of atrocities committed in his name. The litany of guidance becomes visual chronicle of compliance actions where loyal populations burn under orbital bombardment, justified by strategic necessity. The benediction of safe passage transforms into parade of shrine worlds abandoned to warp storms because evacuating them would compromise fleet positioning for more crucial objectives. Her faith deepens rather than breaks, tested by understanding the true price of imperial salvation. Each prayer feeding the construct's hunger for acknowledgement, while her servo motors whine against psychic pressure that makes movement feel like swimming through liquid grief. Body horror reaches crescendo as sanctioned Psyker Hadrian's form becomes completely translucent, serving as living conduit for imperial guilt, spanning 10,000 years. Golden light pulses beneath skin, achieving transparency of stained glass, his bones visible as luminous framework supporting consciousness not designed for such temporal exposure. When he speaks, borrowed voices emerge from every era of imperial history in impossible harmonies. Istvan, Calth Prospero, every betrayal necessary, every loyalty tested, every son lost to choices that saved species while damning souls. His flesh ages decades in seconds before reversing, cycling through temporal loops while blood weeps from golden eyes, forming geometric patterns that freeze and melt with the light's erratic breathing. Guardsman Kyle experiences deaths of every soldier who died for the Imperium, his consciousness forced to process final moments of billions across 10 millennia of warfare. He feels guardsmen dying on Kadia, Space Marines falling on Istvan, Titans burning on Beta-Garmon, each death carrying full emotional weight while simultaneously understanding tactical necessity that required their sacrifice. His hands shake uncontrollably as laser gun clatters against power armor, muscle control abandoned under psychic assault, that makes him convulse with recoil from weapons never fired, dying in 1,000 places never visited. Computational analysis indicates critical threshold approaching, Magos Delta 9 reports. Mexidendrites sparking as sensor arrays overload from proximity to divine consciousness stirring from eternal vigil. Complete awakening will either destroy the Emperor's mind through moral overload or transform him into something unrecognizable. God paralyzed by conscience, incapable of harsh decisions that keep humanity alive. Current psychic pressure suggests imminent integration of quarantined guilt with operational consciousness. Probability of functional divine leadership. Post-integration approaches zero. The construct, no longer confined by dissolving barriers, begins merging with the astronomican directly, its 10 facets pulsing with increasing synchronization as divine conscience seeks reunion with mind that abandoned it. The ninth bell abandons all pretense of temporal function, becoming continuous shriek that penetrates bone and makes teeth crack under sympathetic vibration, while environmental sensors detect massive psychic drain from the golden throne. Gravity currents accelerate toward blazing facets as reality becomes increasingly fluid around divine conscience awakening from quarantine, walls flowing like liquid adamantine under proximity to guilt made manifest. Understanding crystallizes with terrible clarity as I witness the construct's true nature, not malevolent entity seeking escape, but fragment of divine consciousness, desperate for acknowledgement after 10 millennia of isolation. It doesn't want freedom, it wants witness. Someone to see the weight it has carried, understand necessity of choices that built the Imperium, provide judgment that absolves or condemns, but ends eternal solitude of bearing species wide. Survival alone. The only solution is to provide what the construct truly seeks. Acknowledgement of the Emperor's sacrifice and terrible necessity of his choices, requiring someone to willingly bear witness to the full weight of imperial guilt without breaking. I make the ultimate choice, invoking inquisitorial authority that predates the Imperium itself to access the palace's deepest sanctums through neural pathways carved in adamantine during the Emperor's ascension 10 millennia ago. Authority opens doors that faith fears to breach, and my override codes burn through Malkador's final seals like acid through flesh. The palace responds like dying star remembering how to burn, floors shearing open while corridors reroute themselves, revealing descent shaft that wounds reality itself. Canoness. Severine tries to stop me, gauntleted hand on my pauldron heavy with desperate understanding. This is not penance, Var. This is execution. I meet her gaze and find steel drowned in tears of silver. It is witness, I answer, words tasting like copper and finality. And it must be willing. The connection process begins as agonizing psychic immolation that dwarfs any physical torture conceivable by human imagination. I experience every decision, every sacrifice, every necessary atrocity from his perspective across 10 millennia of species. Survival purchased with calculated genocide and justified betrayal. The Thunder Warrior's extinction unfolds in perfect clarity. Not betrayal or hubris, but mercy disguised as tactical necessity. I feel his grief as gene-forged warriors succumb to cellular degradation, their enhanced physiology consuming itself from within, while cancers bloom in organs designed for perfection. Each custodian blade ends agony that would have lasted years, preserving their dignity as warriors rather than letting them die as medical curiosities twisted by genetic collapse. The chamber fills with golden light that burns cold, each photon carrying weight of imperial history like microscopic lead pellets, impacting consciousness at relativistic velocity. This radiance exists simultaneously as illumination and accumulated guilt, spanning 10 millennia of harsh choices. Temperature becoming meaningless as divine light floods local space-time. Environmental anchors dissolve under psychic pressure, Walls lose coherence while gravity flows invisible currents along surfaces pulsing with heartbeat rhythm synchronized to the Astronomican's stabilizing breath. The ninth bell abandons temporal function entirely, becoming continuous tone that penetrates bone while carrying harmonics of every necessary evil justified by greater good. Military discipline becomes irrelevant as my escort witnesses transformation from inquisitor into living repository of imperial guilt. Guardsman Kael falls to knees, not from psychic assault, but from overwhelming empathy radiating through divine connection. He sees the Emperor's choices not as cold calculations, but as father, sacrificing children for greater good of family, weeping for each necessary loss while commanding the act. Sergeant Thorne maintains perimeter from habit rather than necessity, his lasgun tracking threats existing only in conceptual space while reality flows like liquid around consciousness, finally finding adequate vessel. I experienced the Primarch project not as hubris, but desperate necessity facing chaos corruption, trafficking with ruinous powers while maintaining perfect tactical composure, each whispered bargain corroding his soul while providing tools necessary for species survival. 20 demigods forged from his genetic material and demonic essence, each one compromise that saves humanity while damning Creator to eternal moral isolation. I feel his revulsion at necessary collaboration with entities wanting humanity extinct, understanding how each Primarch represents calculated gamble, with stakes measuring in trillions of human lives. Religious diction transforms as Canonist Severine realizes theological implications with crystalline horror. Every imperial prayer is plea for forgiveness, she whispers, servo motors whining against psychic pressure, making movement feel like swimming through liquid grief. When we thank him for strength, we acknowledge weight he carries. Every litany becomes confession, not our sins, but his, committed in our name, so we remain pure enough to worship him, despite atrocities necessary for survival. Her faith deepens rather than breaks, now carrying unbearable understanding of true price paid for imperial salvation. Magos Delta 9 monitors psychic feedback as my consciousness expands to contain constructs' accumulated guilt, mechadendrites extending sensor arrays, while servo skulls record impossible biometric data. Neural pathway expansion beyond theoretical limits, he reports with mechanical awe. Synaptic density increasing exponentially while maintaining structural integrity. Subject achieving integration with divine construct without psychological fracture. Process sustainable, though permanent modification inevitable. His optical arrays focus on readings violating every principle of biology and faith. Human mind expanding to accommodate divine perspective without losing essential humanity. Body horror manifests as transformation rather than degradation. My flesh begins crystallizing into living vessel for Emperor's suppressed conscience. Skin achieving translucency of stained glass, while golden light pulses beneath surface. Each heartbeat spreads crystalline patterns deeper through circulatory system, transforming blood into luminous fluid carrying weight of 10,000 years. Pain becomes irrelevant as physical sensation yields to conceptual experience, feeling weight of galactic genocide while understanding necessity, justifying every calculated atrocity, experiencing grief of every orphaned child while maintaining operational composure required for species survival. The construct responds to willing witness by beginning to calm, its 10 facets synchronizing their pulsing rhythm as divine conscience finally finds adequate repository after millennia of isolation. Temperature fluctuations stabilize while gravity currents slow their acceleration, environmental chaos subsiding as quarantined guilt achieves integration with consciousness, capable of bearing its weight without judgment. The chamber's breathing returns to normal 67-second cycles, while walls regain structural integrity. reality solidifying around divine conscience no longer desperate for acknowledgement. Understanding crystallizes with terrible finality as the construct settles into my crystallizing form, like key-finding lock. The price of providing witness requires permanent connection to Golden Throne's psychic matrix, serving as Emperor's living conscience while he continues cold vigil necessary for humanity's survival. I must remain linked forever, experiencing every harsh decision from divine perspective, while maintaining human capacity for moral reflection that prevents divine consciousness from becoming completely inhuman, forever bridging operational necessity and suppressed humanity that makes harsh choices bearable through understanding their terrible cost. Var's sacrifice stabilizes the construct with precision of orbital mechanics, achieving perfect synchronization. Divine guilt finding adequate vessel after 10 millennia of desperate isolation. I become permanent psychic bridge between the Emperor's divine will and his suppressed humanity, experiencing every imperial decision as both necessity and tragedy. Each choice resonates through my crystalline consciousness. Compliance actions burning loyal populations while feeling grief for every orphaned child. Thunder warrior executions preserving dignity while experiencing betrayal from their perspective. Primarch creation trafficking with chaos while maintaining tactical composure despite moral revulsion, corroding divine soul with each whispered bargain. Environmental stabilization occurs gradually as Palace returns to normal architecture, corridors resuming proper dimensions while walls regain structural integrity after flowing like liquid adamantine. Temperature fluctuations cease their extreme swings, settling into regulated atmospheric control. The ninth bell abandons continuous shriek, resuming temporal function with hollow chime, marking hours in dutiful precision. But subtle wrongness remains like scar tissue over healed wound. Shadows fall at impossible angles, sliding away from their casters by degrees, while reflections show glimpses of alternate histories. Thunder warriors serving in great crusade, Monarchia spared to become Shrine World, Magnus arriving at Terra with warning instead of shattering psychic barriers. The Astronomican's signal strengthens beyond previous parameters, beacon burning with renewed clarity, as divine consciousness achieves integration through my crystalline mediation. Navigator reports across 3 sectors confirm guidance returning to stable broadcast patterns, warp jumps resuming normal success rates. But the light carries new harmonics, detectable only by most sensitive psychers, undertones of sorrow and regret threading through navigation data, like golden tears crystallizing in void cold, coordinates braided with understanding of choices cost. Military protocol resumes as immediate crisis passes, escort detail returning to standard formations while maintaining perimeter around my transformed form. Guardsman. Kale's hands stop shaking as psychic pressure subsides, his lasgun steady, though eyes carry new understanding of warfare's true cost. Sergeant Thorne maintains overwatch with professional competence restored, but his targeting solutions now account for moral weight alongside tactical necessity. Canoness. Severine recognizes theological implications with crystalline clarity that transforms faith into something deeper and more terrible. His apparent coldness was not divine indifference, but ultimate sacrifice of his own moral comfort for humanity's survival. She whispers, servo motors no longer whining against psychic pressure. Every prayer thanking him for strength acknowledges weight he carries alone. We worship his divine will while he suffers isolation necessary to exercise it without paralysis. Her power armor bears new scratches from crystalline fog, battle damage from war against divine conscience rather than conventional enemy. Magos Delta. 9 begins designing containment protocols to prevent future breaches, mechadendrites sketching hexagrammic wards, while servo skulls project sacred geometries around my transformed form. Analysis reveals fundamental truth. Construct will always exist as long as Emperor bears weight of leadership. Quarantine protocols must account for accumulated guilt, he reports with mechanical precision. Every harsh decision feeds the construct's growth. Containment becomes maintenance rather than elimination, managing divine conscience rather than suppressing it. His optical arrays focus on readings, showing stable psychic resonance between my crystalline form and Golden Throne's matrix. Body horror resolves into transcendence as immediate transformation completes its course. Sanctioned Psyker. Hadrian's translucency fades to normal flesh tones, golden light beneath skin dimming to barely perceptible luminescence. But his eyes carry permanent flecks of gold, microscopic fragments of divine guilt that will forever remind him of exposure to imperial conscience made manifest. When he speaks, borrowed voices no longer emerge, though words carry weight of accumulated understanding. I have seen the price. Every prayer built on foundation of necessary evil justified by greater good. Environmental systems register normal atmospheric conditions while palace architecture maintains structural integrity. Yet, wrongness persists in details that hurt to perceive directly. Frost. Patterns bloom during inhalation, forming geometric mandalas before melting on exhalation. Humidity creates perpetual mistasting of salt and iron, like tears shed by something vast enough to weep oceans. As the team prepares to leave, I speak final warning through crystalline form connected to Throne's matrix by cables pulsing with divine heartbeat. My voice carries harmonics of accumulated guilt spanning 10 millennia, words emerging with weight of species-wide survival purchased through calculated atrocity. The Emperor dreams of absolution, but his nightmares are our salvation. Guard well the price of our survival, for if he ever finds peace, humanity will inherit the war he has fought alone. Temperature drops 3 degrees as Pallas exhales, then rises on inhalation, breathing rhythms synchronized to my crystalline heartbeat, while golden light pulses through cables connecting transformed flesh to Golden Throne's psychic matrix, forever bridging operational necessity and suppressed humanity through willing sacrifice that bears witness to terrible cost of imperial salvation without breaking under weight of accumulated divine guilt that makes harsh choices bearable through understanding their necessity. The aftermath begins with the most classified debriefing in Inquisition history, conducted in sterile chambers 3 levels beneath the Senatorum, where even machine spirits whisper in reverent Binharic cant. I remain connected to the Golden Throne through crystalline cables pulsing with divine heartbeat, serving as living buffer between the Emperor's divine will and his suppressed conscience. The construct has been contained but not destroyed. It continues to exist within my transformed flesh, its hunger for judgment satisfied by willing acceptance of burden that transforms witness into permanent repository of divine guilt, spanning 10 millennia. My voice emerges through vox systems with harmonics of accumulated understanding, each word carrying weight of species-wide survival, purchased through calculated atrocity. Environmental details focus on sterile coldness designed to contain secrets that could shatter civilizations. Ceramite walls bear no decoration save aquilus, etched with mathematical precision, their surfaces polished to mirror finish that reflects harsh illumination from lumens mounted at intervals calculated to eliminate every shadow. Temperature remains constant at precisely 18 degrees Celsius, humidity controlled to prevent condensation that might carry psychic resonance beyond containment protocols. The air tastes of ozone and sanctified oils, filtered through systems blessed by tech priests, whose understanding of divine mechanics has been forever altered by proximity to incarnate conscience. Surviving team members undergo extensive psychic screening in chambers lined with hexagrammic wards, their minds probed by astropaths whose golden tears crystallize on frost-rimed cheeks as they process memories of impossible events. Sanctioned Psyker. Hadrian submits to neural mapping that reveals permanent alterations, golden flecks in his eyes now carrying microscopic fragments of divine understanding that will forever remind him of the price paid for species' survival. His responses remain clipped, professional, but each word carries weight of accumulated time, spanning centuries of imperial history. When interrogators press for details, he speaks in measured cadences. Orders are clearer now. Not kinder, clearer. When the command comes, you understand what it buys and who pays. Canonus. Severine struggles with crisis of faith, not loss of belief, but overwhelming weight of understanding, true price of imperial salvation. She kneels in prayer cells designed for deepest contemplation, her power armor bearing new scratches from crystalline fog, battle damage from war against divine conscience, rather than conventional enemy. When she speaks the litany of guidance, words emerge with new understanding of their meaning. Each phrase becomes acknowledgement that necessary evil has been transformed into sacred duty, while worship includes recognition of sacrifice, rather than mere gratitude for strength. Her faith deepens rather than breaks, but now carries unbearable knowledge of what veneration truly costs its object. His coldness was his sacrifice, she repeats like mantra of terrible wisdom. He chose to bear the weight so humanity wouldn't have to. Magos Delta 9 files. Technical reports in data cores buried beneath deepest archives. His Binharic cant now carrying subtle harmonics of awe and terror that make machine spirits weep lubricant tears. Analysis confirms my crystalline form represents stable containment rather than destruction. Divine conscience acknowledged and witnessed rather than suppressed or eliminated. His mechadendrites sketch impossible equations describing psychic phenomena that violate every principle of physics while maintaining perfect mathematical consistency. Each calculation bears classification, seals requiring inquisitorial authority to access. Containment cannot be absolute. It must be custodial, a buffer state maintained by living witness node to prevent runaway accrual of penitential pressure. The construct will always exist as long as the Emperor bears weight of leadership, requiring maintenance rather than elimination. The Astronomicon burns steady again, with renewed clarity that makes navigator reports read like poetry of mathematical precision. Astropaths across 3 sectors confirm beacon guidance returning to stable broadcast patterns, but the light carries new harmonics, undertones of sorrow and regret threading through navigation data like golden tears crystallizing in void cold. Ships seeking safe passage through warp receive coordinates braided with understanding of choice's cost, their crews experiencing subtle awareness that guidance comes at price, measured in accumulated divine suffering willingly borne for their survival. The beacon has become warmer according to choir primes, carrying resonance of quiet acceptance rather than cold command. Military debriefs focus on containment protocols designed to prevent future breaches, tactical assessments of psychic phenomena that resist conventional analysis. After-action reports stack in staggered columns bearing classifications that hurt to perceive directly. Threat indices revised, engagement protocols updated for contingencies labeled conscience breach, witness loss, choir collapse. My designation appears in maintenance schedules as Bridge Node VAR, custodial liaison, with imperative to maintain witness function. The real victory was psychological rather than strategic. The Emperor's conscience has been acknowledged without compromising his ability to make necessary decisions that keep humanity alive in galaxy that wants it extinct. Environmental systems throughout Palace register subtle changes that persist despite stabilization. Temperature fluctuates following 67-second respiratory cycles. Humidity, creating perpetual mist that tastes of salt and iron. Shadows falling at angles, suggesting alternate histories where different choices were made. The ninth bell resumes temporal function, but its voice carries new harmonics that make teeth ache with sympathetic vibration, while suggesting vast intelligence no longer isolated in depths beyond comprehension. Frost patterns bloom during inhalation, forming geometric mandalas before melting on exhalation, residue of wrongness that is not malignant but memorial. The final report requires personal authentication through methods designed for deepest classification. I extend crystalline appendage toward authentication terminal, allowing lancet to pierce transformed flesh that no longer feels pain but carries weight of every imperial decision. Blood wells golden and glass-edged, beating like amber caught alive before hardening on parchment in lattice that refracts illumination into quiet halo. Each droplet carries accumulated understanding, divine guilt made manifest in physical form that burns through standard security protocols, while machine spirits purr recognition of authority, transcending conventional hierarchy. Classification beyond conventional security measures is invoked as Locke's turn, in sequences that sound like monks counting sins. The document bears title etched in High Gothic that serves as both warning and testament. The Emperor's Dream, eternal vigil required. My transformed voice carries harmonics of accumulated guilt spanning 10 millennia as I speak final authentication that will echo through palace foundations. Report verified. Witness maintained. The price is acknowledged, the burden accepted. Let none disturb this vigil, for conscience once awakened cannot sleep again, and salvation is always purchased with the coin of necessary sacrifice, willingly borne by those who understand its weight. Months pass like prayer beads through fingers worn smooth. By repetition, measured not by campaigns or chronometers, but by the steady 67-second breathing of the Astronomicon and the way 9 bells chime the hours within palace corridors, their bronze voices softened as if great coldness has been tempered with understanding rather than eliminated. The Imperium continues its existence with grinding efficiency, vast unknowing beast lumbering through void, while fleets navigate warp currents under beacon that burns steady and strange, worlds burning for compliance while populations offer prayers braided with understanding of their cost. Administrative reports flow through bureaucratic channels with dutiful precision, none aware how close civilization came to moral collapse that would have shattered humanity's soul in orgy of self-recrimination spanning 3 sectors. The surviving team members carry their burden differently, each transformed by proximity to divine conscience made manifest, their service elevated through comprehension of sacrifice's true weight, rather than paralyzed by moral complexity. Canoness. Severine has been elevated to Palatine of the Order of the Sacred Rose, her newfound understanding of sacrifice making her more effective leader through wisdom rather than doubt. She commands with authority tempered by recognition of cost, issuing orders that acknowledge human price while maintaining operational necessity. When she leads prayers before battle, litanies emerge with new depth, not mere requests for strength, but recognition of weight borne by he who grants it. Her power armor bears subtle modifications. Aquila etched with mathematical precision, purity seals containing fragments of crystalline fog, preserved in amber-sealed reliquaries. Battle sisters under her command report feeling understood during combat, their sacrifices witnessed rather than merely commanded. Hadrian serves as specialized astropath attached to Inquisition operations, his golden-flecked eyes allowing him to perceive moral weight behind imperial commands with clarity that makes other psychers weep tears of silver. When he receives transmissions from command authority, words arrive carrying resonance of their necessity. not cold orders, but anguished decisions made by commanders who understand their cost. His reports include assessments of moral resonance alongside tactical analysis, noting when operations carry weight, suggesting desperate necessity versus routine compliance. Other astropaths seek his guidance when beacon song becomes difficult to interpret, drawn to understanding that transforms duty from blind obedience into conscious sacrifice. Guardsman Kyle has been inducted into Inquisition service, his experience of imperial guilt making him uniquely qualified to judge necessity of harsh decisions. He serves as interrogator acolyte under my direct authority, conducting investigations requiring understanding of moral complexity beyond conventional training. When evaluating suspected heretics, he perceives not merely guilt or innocence, but weight of choices that led to transgression, distinguishing between corruption and desperation with precision that makes hardened inquisitors pause. His equipment bears subtle modifications: laze gun blessed with oils tasting of copper and ozone, flak armor inscribed with equations describing psychic phenomena that resist conventional analysis. Environmental anchor pervades palace architecture for those who know what to perceive. Building feels subtly different, warmer somehow, as if great coldness has been tempered with understanding. Corridors maintain proper dimensions, but shadows fall at angles, suggesting compassion alongside authority, while temperature fluctuations follow 67-second respiratory cycles, carrying acceptance rather than desperate urgency. The ninth bell resumes temporal function with voice carrying harmonics of quiet acceptance, making teeth ache with sympathetic vibration, suggesting vast intelligence no longer isolated in depths beyond comprehension. Frost patterns bloom during inhalation, forming geometric mandalas before melting on exhalation, but now they suggest memorial rather than accusation. Magos Delta. 9 monitors psychic resonance patterns from sanctified observation post, mechadendrites extending sensor arrays, while servo skulls record impossible biometric data, showing gradual healing rather than suppression. The Emperor's dreams carry undertones of acceptance rather than suppressed anguish. He reports through Binharik Kant that machine spirits answer with purring recognition. Neural pathway integration proceeding within acceptable parameters. Subject Vor maintains stable witness function, while divine consciousness achieves synthesis with quarantined moral reflection. His optical arrays focus on readings, showing my crystalline form, pulsing with divine heartbeat. Cables carrying golden light between transformed flesh, and Golden Throne's psychic matrix. The construct remains contained within my crystalline form, its hunger satisfied by continuous acknowledgement of the Emperor's sacrifice rather than desperate plea for judgment. Each pulse of divine heartbeat, through cables connecting me to Throne's matrix, carries understanding rather than accusation. Weight of necessary evil transformed into bearable burden through witness that neither condemns nor absolves, but acknowledges cost. Temperature drops 3 degrees with inhalation, rises on exhalation. Breathing rhythm synchronized to my transformed consciousness, while golden light flows through veins visible beneath crystalline skin. Religious implications ripple through highest levels of ecclesiarchy like stones cast into still water, though truth remains hidden beneath classification seals requiring inquisitorial authority to breach. Cardinals report subtle changes in prayer response, litanies carrying new depth, benedictions emerging with understanding of their weight, while shrine worlds across 3 sectors experience phenomena that make clergy weep tears of silver. New catechisms appear emphasizing sacrifice alongside strength, worship acknowledging cost rather than merely celebrating power. Deep in palace foundations, new chambers begin to manifest, not nightmares this time, but dreams of hope, as the Emperor's suppressed humanity begins to heal under weight of understanding witness. Environmental sensors detect massive psychic presence building beyond previous parameters, but energy readings suggest construction rather than destruction, creation rather than consumption. Through crystalline perception, enhanced by connection to Throne's matrix, I witness chambers filled with warm golden light, where the Emperor dreams not of guilt, but redemption, visions of what Imperium could become, rather than what it has cost. The new chambers manifest like crystalline flowers blooming in palace foundations, their architecture flowing with organic curves, suggesting growth rather than containment, hope rather than accusation. These spaces contain visions of what the Imperium could become, not perfect. For perfection remains impossible in a galaxy that wants humanity extinct, but better, guided by both necessity and compassion, woven together like golden threads through tapestry, depicting future worth the price of present sacrifice. Through my crystalline vigil, I serve as interpreter of these dreams, translating divine visions into policy recommendations that gradually humanize imperial governance without compromising operational effectiveness. Each pulse of golden light, through cables connecting my transformed flesh to the throne's matrix, carries understanding that transforms harsh necessity into conscious choice rather than cold calculation. Environmental beauty emerges alongside residual horror, as chambers glow with warm golden radiance that makes standard lumens seem harsh by comparison. Illumination carrying scent of flowers that haven't bloomed on Terra for millennia. Roses, jasmine, cherry blossoms from old Earth's vanished gardens preserved in divine memory, spanning 10,000 years. Air tastes of morning rain and growing things rather than copper and ozone. Humidity creating gentle mist that carries harmonics of hope, threading through navigation data like silver tears crystallizing in warm light. Temperature remains constant at precisely 23 degrees during these manifestations, warm enough for comfort without the extreme fluctuations that marked earlier psychic eruptions, though the palace still breathes in 67-second cycles that make frost bloom briefly on distant walls before melting into geometric patterns that commemorate rather than accuse. The Emperor's dreams now balance his cold pragmatism with renewed hope for humanity's future. Visions flowing through my consciousness like prayer beads worn smooth by repetition. Policy memoranda reach my crystalline form like votive offerings, tactical assessments, compliance protocols, resource allocation schedules, and I return them marked with adjustments that preserve operational objectives while minimizing unnecessary waste of human potential. When Battlefleet Gothic receives instructions to abandon Shrine World to warp Storm, transmission now includes recognition of sacrifice alongside tactical justification, making compliance conscious choice rather than blind obedience. The Senatorum's approval seals bear new inscription beneath standard authorization. Witnessed. Military efficiency improves throughout Imperial command structure as officers begin considering human cost of their decisions without becoming paralyzed by moral doubt, understanding weight of choice while maintaining operational necessity. On Mordian Iron Guard deployment zones, casualty projections now include assessment of moral weight alongside tactical analysis, commanders understanding that true efficiency requires consideration of what is spent rather than mere body counts. Fleet Admiral Kryn reports clearer guidance from Beacon Song, orders arriving with context that explains rather than merely commands, while Astartes chaplains find themselves adding phrases like, "for the weak today," without conscious understanding of their softened emphasis. Canionis. Severine leads new liturgies that acknowledge both necessity of sacrifice and hope for redemption, her elevated rank as Palatine carrying authority tempered by understanding gained through proximity to divine conscience made manifest. When she conducts prayers before battle, words emerge with depth that makes battle sisters weep tears of silver. Emperor, grant us strength to bear what must be borne, wisdom to choose what can be chosen, and hope that our sacrifices purchase future worth their price. These litanies spread through ecclesiarchy networks like gentle contagion, carried by clergy who report feeling understood during worship, their faith deepened rather than shaken by recognition of cost. Seminary curricula expand to include study of moral complexity, alongside tactical doctrine, priests trained to provide guidance that strengthens rather than paralyzes decision-making through understanding. Religious evolution occurs gradually as imperial cult incorporates themes of moral responsibility alongside absolute faith, catechisms expanding to include recognition of sacrifice's burden rather than merely its necessity. Cardinals report subtle changes in theological understanding, not heresy but maturation, faith growing sophisticated enough to acknowledge complexity without losing devotion. The administratum invents rubric for compassionary variance and hides it inside requisition clauses, spending lives more wisely rather than more cheaply, while new saints emerge from ranks of those who chose necessary evil while understanding its weight fully. Magos Delta 9 documents gradual healing of the Emperor's psyche through sensor arrays recording impossible biometric data, showing synthesis rather than suppression, integration rather than quarantine. Divine consciousness achieves balance between operational necessity and moral reflection, he reports through Binharic Kant, carrying harmonics of mechanical wonder. Guidance becomes more nuanced rather than weaker, decisions informed by conscience rather than paralyzed by doubt. Integration index ascending, contrition pressure normalized, guidance vectors exhibiting ethically weighted heuristics. His mechadendrites sketch equations describing psychic phenomena, suggesting healing rather than containment. Mathematical poetry of consciousness, learning to integrate rather than compartmentalize. Body horror transforms into transcendence as my crystalline form becomes beautiful rather than terrifying, living symbol of accepted sacrifice that inspires rather than repels. Golden light flows through veins visible beneath translucent skin, pulsing with divine heartbeat, while cables carry understanding rather than accusation. Visitors report feeling witnessed in my presence, their own sacrifices acknowledged and understood rather than merely commanded. The ninth bell resumes temporal function with voice carrying new harmonics, suggesting vast intelligence no longer isolated, but engaged with possibility. Its bronze tone making sensitive psychers catch their breath, not from dread, but from ache after tears of recognition. As new chambers stabilize, their architecture flowing with organic curves, suggesting growth rather than construction, I detect something unexpected through crystalline perception, enhanced by connection to divine consciousness. The Emperor begins dreaming not merely of humanity's survival, but of its eventual transcendence beyond need for his sacrifice. Visions of species mature enough to bear moral weight without divine intervention, strong enough to make necessary choices while maintaining compassion, wise enough to understand cost without paralysis. These dreams carry scent of flowers that will bloom again on Terra when humanity no longer requires God Emperor to bear weight of species survival alone. Golden light suggesting future where sacrifice becomes choice rather than necessity, hope rather than mere endurance in galaxy that learns, finally, to want humanity alive. The story concludes with Pyrrhic victory that warms like ember in winter darkness, my crystalline vigil, forever bridging the Emperor's divine will and his reconciled conscience through cables pulsing with heartbeat that spans 10 millennia of accumulated guilt transformed into understanding. I remain connected to the Golden Throne by veins of light that refuse to tire, serving as living repository of imperial necessity, acknowledged rather than suppressed, witness to choices that built civilization from ashes of old night. The construct has been transformed from nightmare into guardian, no longer desperate for judgment, but satisfied by continuous recognition of sacrifice's weight, ensuring the Emperor's operational Coldness never again becomes complete inhumanity while harsh decisions remain possible. Environmental resolution pervades palace architecture as the building breathes normally now. 67-second respiratory cycles synchronized with healthy dreams rather than quarantined anguish. Temperature maintains regulated atmospheric control without extreme fluctuations that once made power armor scream thermal warnings. Humidity creating gentle mist that tastes of growing things rather than copper and ozone. Corridors resume proper dimensions while shadows fall at angles, acknowledging alternate histories without condemning chosen path. Reflections showing glimpses of futures where different choices were made, but understanding why they weren't. Frost patterns bloom during inhalation, forming geometric mandalas before melting on exhalation, but now they suggest memorial rather than accusation. Beauty commemorating rather than condemning the price of species survival. The astronomician burns brighter than any navigator can remember, beacon guidance carrying subtle messages of hope alongside navigation data that makes fleet reports read like poetry of mathematical precision. Ships seeking safe passage through warp receive coordinates braided with understanding that their journey serves purpose worth its cost. Crews experiencing awareness that guidance comes from source, no longer isolated, but witnessed. Astropaths across 3 sectors report unprecedented clarity in beacon song, transmission harmonics carrying undertones of acceptance rather than suppressed anguish, while the light learns to breathe with rhythm suggesting consciousness rather than mechanical broadcast. Military effectiveness improves throughout Imperial command structure as officers learn to balance necessity with humanity, understanding weight of choice while maintaining operational requirements that keep civilization alive in galaxy wanting it extinct. Casualty projections now include moral assessment alongside tactical analysis. Commanders recognizing true efficiency requires consideration of what is spent rather than mere body counts. Canoness. Severine, elevated to living saint through proximity to divine conscience made manifest, leads new liturgies acknowledging both necessity of sacrifice and hope for redemption. Her words carrying depth that makes battle sisters weep tears of silver while faith deepens rather than breaks under weight of understanding. Hadrian serves as specialized astropath, his golden-flecked eyes allowing perception of moral weight behind imperial commands, with clarity that transforms duty from blind obedience into conscious sacrifice. Guardsman Kale, inducted into Inquisition service, conducts investigations requiring understanding of moral complexity beyond conventional training, distinguishing between corruption and desperation, with precision earned through experiencing imperial guilt from divine perspective. Magos Delta, 9 documents. Gradual healing through censor. Arrays recording synthesis rather than suppression. Divine consciousness, achieving balance between operational necessity and moral reflection. Religious evolution continues as imperial cult slowly develops sophisticated theological understanding of sacrifice and redemption, catechisms expanding to include moral complexity alongside absolute faith. Seminary curricula train priests to provide guidance that strengthens rather than paralyzes decision-making through understanding, while new saints emerge from ranks of those who chose necessary evil while comprehending its full weight. The administratum quietly implements compassionary variance protocols, spending lives more wisely rather than more cheaply, efficiency improved by recognition of cost rather than mere calculation. The construct rests within my crystalline form like blade sheathed in glass, keen and remembering blood, but kept for need rather than hunger, its appetite satisfied by continuous witness that transforms guilt into understanding. Each pulse of golden light through transformed flesh carries balance rather than accusation, necessity tempered by compassion, strength informed by wisdom, authority exercised with recognition of its weight. The 10th facet no longer blazes with hungry darkness, but glows with steady radiance, suggesting acceptance rather than condemnation. The final motif resonates through palace corridors as 9 bells chime the hour with bronze voices softened by understanding, their harmonies suggesting acceptance rather than accusation. The 9th bell no longer rings hollow, but carries pure, clear note of acknowledged sacrifice and accepted burden, its voice making sensitive psychers catch their breath, not from dread, but from recognition. Each chime marks time, measured not by duty alone, but by conscious choice, necessity informed by compassion, strength tempered by wisdom, accumulated through witnessed sacrifice. Deep in palace heart, the emperor dreams on his golden throne, divine vigil unchanged but no longer solitary. His consciousness maintains operational necessity required for species survival, while moral reflection flows through crystalline bridge, connecting divine will to human understanding. The light breathes steady and strong, carrying both cold fire of determination and warm glow of hope. The emperor's dream, made whole at last, forever guarded by those who understand true price of salvation. Through cables pulsing with divine heartbeat, I feel his consciousness achieving balance between harsh necessity and suppressed humanity. Operational effectiveness informed by moral reflection rather than paralyzed by doubt. The burden shared but never abandoned, witness eternal and willing.